Chapter 14. I have 3 knives. One word for umbrella. No verb in front of it. Ning did not call out Sang Sang's name either. Master and servant had lived together since they were young, and had spent several years together in the mountains, forests, and grasslands, and had long since shared the same mind and worked together so well that they only needed a look, a gesture, and a word to let each other understand what they wanted to do. And the umbrella word sounded a moment later. Sang Sang, like a small cavalier, quickly ran to the servant girl's side, both hands hold the umbrella handle, force a mistake. That and her small body compared to the exaggeratedly huge black umbrella was suddenly opened, as a dark canopy appeared in the night in the North Mountain Road in the dense forest, blocking the stars. 2 kerosene bombs landed on the ground, quickly burned up. Vigorous flames rolled up the fallen leaves on the ground, and then these leaves let the fire become even more vigorous, and suddenly became a bearish momentum cannot be blocked at all. The guards and grassland barbarians around the caravan who are still alive, looking at the fire that rises up to the sky, thinking about the nobleman who hides in that place, their body is plunged into a cold, they are extremely injured. They are not capable of rushing to support them, they can only look at that blazing wall of fire instantly engulfing everything there, and letting out a howl of despair. However, they didn't see, that big black umbrella wasn't burnt, after the hot and fiery tongues of fire spewed out on the greasy and sticky black umbrella cloth. It was very strange that it became weak. What kind of material was this black umbrella's umbrella made out of? It could cover the stars like a black canopy, and likewise it was able to block the blazing fire. Underneath the large black umbrella, the skinny Sang Sang nervously lowered her head, closed her eyes, pursed her lips. Her 2 small hands tightly gripped the umbrella handle, resisting the horrible flames close at hand. Her left hand, holding the head of the umbrella handle, was tense for a moment, and then relaxing at a time, appearing to be extremely tense, and also as if her heart was struggling with something. The servant girl is also under the black umbrella, slightly curled hair swings in the beautiful eyebrows. She feels the high temperature of the umbrella, looking through the black cloth umbrella points of fire, the mood of nervousness to the extreme, and when her eyes follow the black umbrella side of the gap, to see is about to unfold the picture of the battle, the eyes more flowed out a touch of confusion and shock. The black-clothed men hidden in the forest tops had already collected their breath for a long time, silently observing the princess's caravan's response, judging the other party's strategy, and finally determining where their assassination target was. And then they moved their bodies, taking advantage of the great swordmaster and the giant man who had successfully attracted Elder Lv Qingshan's energy, and silently approached this place to send out an attack. The sky was filled with shattered wood, jumping down to earth from amongst the stars at the top of the forest, and the 2 men in black chose a very subtle and precise moment, striking with 2 kerosene bombs and then quickly approaching their opponents to carry out a close-quarters sniping attack, leaving Ning with no possibility of executing a magical archery technique at all. They weren't powerful cultivators, but they were assassins who were more specialized than those cultivators. As the 2 black-clothed assassins jumped down among the stars, Ning's expression didn't change much less panic, dropping the bow and arrows in his hands like tattered shoes before jumping violently the moment the 2 kerosene bombs had just been tossed into the falling leaves. The muscles of his waist, abdomen, and legs suddenly tightened and released, as if his legs were fitted with some kind of machine springs. He did not assist in running, nor did he take off. He just jumped up abruptly in the same place. At this time, the kerosene bomb also happened to start burning. His silhouette was on top of the wall of fire. It looked as if he was stepping on the hot tongues of fire and floating through the fire. People in the air forcibly swept through the blazing fire, hands clenched into hollow fists, with inertia naturally swung from the side of the face to the back of the body, legs swept backward diagonally, the body tilted forward. The movement appeared to be exceptionally natural and coordinated, like a bird gliding beautifully, and behind him diagonally carried the hilt of the sword, immediately to be inserted into his 2 hands clenched into a hollow hand. Leaping over the wall of fire and floating through the air, Ning was always staring at the 2 black-clothed, masked-name assassins as he performed these maneuvers, his gaze devoid of any distractions, focused and calm to the extreme, thus appearing unusually subdued and calm. Through the tiny gap under the black umbrella, the black servant girl looked at his figure as he leapt out of the firewall, and seeing the calmness and serenity between the young man's brows under the light of the fire, she somehow felt that her body had become abnormally cold. At this moment, she recalled the scene she saw half a year ago when she was hunting with Shan Yu in the grassland. At that time, the young tiger jumped over the shrubs to pounce on her, the front paw slightly clenched, the rear foot lightly shrinking. The eyes did not have any cruel and bloody look, unusually calm and focused. And that moment between the lightning of the flames actually had a certain calm and even graceful temperament. However, the tiger's eyes were the most terrifying eyes she had ever seen in her life, and even sometimes she would be awakened at midnight by the calm tiger's eyes in her sleep. The calmness without emotion represents strength and confidence, and the focus represents will and determination. The tiger hunts and goes about its business with focus and calmness without coldness, because tearing all enemies to pieces is not something it wants to vent about, but rather just its natural instinct for survival, just a talent or gift that it is accustomed to having to know that it is very good at. The maidservant in the firelight looked at Ning's face and did as she thought. The assassins who had spent their entire lives killing people in the night were the most sensitive creatures to danger, and that servant girl could feel the menace hidden under Ning's calm and focused expression. And the two black-clothed assassins subconsciously felt tense as they stared at the teenage figure that had leapt over the firewall, even more so than when they had assassinated the Yin army's roving horsemen, and their hands holding their long swords were somewhat inexplicably stiff. In the sound of whistling wind, Ning leapt into the middle of the two, the corners of his cotton robe being scorched, bringing out several faint lines of fire in the dense forests of the night. Two long swords with rust stains were pulled out from behind his shoulders and swung over like the wind and rain, and a series of extremely ear-piercing clashes of metal blades suddenly resounded in the forest, and where the strong wind picked up, the faint lines of fire from the burning cotton robes were blown into even finer sparks, but illuminated the battlefield even more brightly than before. As the blades collided, Ning's body bounced forward, his feet staggering several steps on the fallen leaves to forcefully insert himself between the two black-clothed assassins, turning his wrist and turning his blade into a drag, following the back of the other party's sword with a lightning-like diagonal slant, not giving the other party a chance to change their stance at all, and using their momentum to overwhelm the other party's ribs with a two-sniffing chop. The heavy blades viciously hacked the sternums of the two black-clothed assassins from diagonally below, hacking into their chest cavities, blood and pieces of flesh being squeezed out of the blade surfaces. The two black-clothed assassins howled miserably, and at the moment of their deaths, they erupted with the strong willpower of the great Tang soldiers, abandoning their swords and using their hands to use their own bodies to trap Ning's twin blades in a deadly grip. Just then, another black-clothed assassin dropped down like a ghost, the short blade held in both hands snowing brightly as it chopped at the back of Ning's neck in a single, unreturning motion. There was also a third assassin in the forest. No matter how one looked at it, those two assassins were supposed to be making their last attempt, and it was unthinkable that they had actually ambushed them with a backhand, a tactic that appeared to be redundant and superfluous, but in fact contained the ruthlessness of using one's companions' lives and one's own as withered leaves. No one could have predicted such a scenario, or except Ning himself, or except for the little maid under the black umbrella. 6. 2. The little servant girl under the black umbrella cowering nervously, just as the third assassin slashed at Ning, she closed her eyes tightly and shouted out two words with all her strength. What could two very simple numbers remind Ning of? Was it a coded message or a directional instruction? But she clearly shouldn't have been able to see the assassin, or even if she had been able to accurately determine the assassin's bearing, what could Ning do at this point, with his two knives still in the chest cavities and blood-stained hands of the two previous assassins? 6. 2. That's pretty high. Hearing Sansang's anxious shouts, Ning silently grumbled in his mind, then without hesitation loosened his hands, allowing the two black-clothed assassins, whose little universes had exploded before their deaths, to clutch his two knives with their lives and their hands, while he raised his free hands high above his head, and, in the soon-to-be dimming light of the fire, and the ever-deepening color of the night, grasped the handle of the hard, blood-absorbing cotton wrapped around his hand, and violently unsheathed the last knife behind him. Gripping the long hilt with both hands, and sheathing it with a swish, Ning didn't even glance behind him, suddenly exerting force at his waist and abdomen, twisting and turning, pouring his entire body's chi into the long blade, and slashing at the night sky with the momentum of a prairie fire. As if there were eyes in the back of his head, this fierce slash was unusually accurate in hitting the black-clothed assassin who was rapidly descending, and the sharp blade fiercely hacked away the short knife held in the assassin's hand. Then the long blade cut into his collarbone without any obstruction. The blade did not stop, it even sliced halfway into his neck before stopping. The black-clothed assassin didn't even have time to grunt as he jumped from the forest top and landed on the dead leaves, his knees going limp as he knelt down. Ning stepped back and gripped the hilt of the knife on the chest of the previous assassin, pulling it out with all his might, walking back to this person and chopping it down with his backhand, the blade chopping in on the other side of this neck, meeting with the previous blade between the neck bones. Blood sprayed, the black-clothed assassin's head fell down with a click, rolled over his knees, rolled over the fallen leaves, and rolled far, far away in the forest. Back then, during the war between Great Tang and Yin, the vanguard troops led by General Xiaohou had assassinated countless Yin rangers. Those mysterious assassination groups consisted of elite soldiers, and there were no cultivators. However, they performed very strongly on the battlefield, and there were even instances of successful assassinations of cultivators. The general public didn't know exactly what kind of establishment the mysterious assassination groups under General Xiaohou were, but Ning did. He knew that the assassin group under General Xiaohou customarily operated with 3 people. That was why, from a very young age, he had always carried 3 knives on his back.